Revealed. The incredible text from my son after I invested $50,000 to unexpected journey of love. Mark stared at the crisp check in his hands, a monumental decision looming over him. $50,000, the amount teased with promise but weighed with unspoken expectations. This investment in Jake's future felt like a double-edged sword. On one side, a golden opportunity for his son to thrive in a specialized education program where others had faltered. On the other, the burgeoning pressure was palpable, like a weight crushing down on the very foundation of their relationship. Shouldn't the desire for success be a shared journey? But it felt like an ultimatum wrapped in currency he now wished he could retract. He had poured years into his work as an electrical engineer, clocking endless overtime to carve out a life for his family. Dreams recycled into spreadsheets, aspirations reduced to electrical currents. Where was his creative fire? Now it paled in comparison to the flickering light of his son's academic troubles. Watching Jake's shoulders slump further each day fed into Mark's self-doubt. He was haunted by the fear that he was trading his son's potential for his own vision of success. As Jake bounced between indifference and despair, nerves gnawing at him, Mark felt their bond fraying, disintegrating beneath the weight of the check he hoped would change everything. How did he go from nurturing a brilliant young mind to an invisible force of pressure? Why was it that Jake's struggle made Mark feel like he was failing, not just as a father, but as a man who aspired to create a better world for his family? In the bubbling chaos of Mark's mind, notions of success twisted and turned, morphing into a giant question mark. What did Jake want? Did he even care about a prestigious education when self-worth lay scattered around him like shattered glass? It was terrifying. Mark could sense that his bond with Jake was unraveling, stitched together solely by an unyielding hope that this money would weed out the weeds choking Jake's potential. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Mark's thoughts began to settle, the sound of his phone buzzed against the table, vibrating violently as if to match his increasingly frenetic heartbeat. The screen lit up, revealing a message from Jake that looked like the sun breaking through a storm. Yet, as he read the words, his heart sank. Every character felt like an arrow piercing through his chest. Dad, I don't think I can do this. I'm scared I'll never be enough. Is this what you really want for me? I feel lost. Every word echoed a raw truth. Instantly, tension coursed through Mark's veins. This wasn't merely a communication. It was a revelation, raw and frantic. He had struggled to articulate their bond, and now Jake's doubts pinned him down, reminding him that he may have unknowingly molded a path for his son, shackling his potential rather than freeing it. Seeing in Technicolor, the fear in Jake's words paralyzed Mark, like a deer caught in headlights. What dismissal of his expectations, and the echo of his dreams projected onto his son, could he offer in return? This wasn't just about money but understanding. As the weight of the truth settled over him, entangling and twisting in myriad directions, Mark stared into the abyss. An abyss echoing countless unfulfilled dreams and unrecognized fears. What would he say? Would he push for success or let Jake explore? Two futures pulled at him, each vying for his allegiance. The moment hung in the air, dense with anxiety, while the stars outside twinkled with distant possibilities. Mark's breath was shallow as he stared at the screen, the words blurring into an echo of his own forgotten aspirations. He felt abruptly unmoored, as if the very ground he stood on had shifted beneath his feet. In that moment he understood. This was more than just a financial investment. It was the pivot point of his relationship with Jake. He realized that holding the check wasn't simply about securing Jake's future. It was about how he projected his own unachieved dreams onto his son. Every expectation he had placed on Jake bled through the ink of that check, forming a narrative that both suffocated and defined them. No amount of money could replace understanding, acceptance, or communication. Mark needed a strategy, a way to restore the bond they had nurtured through years of shared experiences. After all, he had wanted to raise a man capable of steering his own ship, not a clone of his ambitions. Standing in his kitchen, Mark envisioned a different conversation. One that didn't involve terms like scholarships or grades, but rather feelings, fears, and dreams raw and unresolved. After a brief pause, he picked up his phone, fingers trembling slightly over the screen as he drafted a response. Jake, I didn't realize how much pressure you felt. I invested because I believed in your potential, but maybe I lost sight of what you want. Let us talk, really talk. I'm here for you. Sending the message felt like loosening a tight band around his chest, yet simultaneously aroused anxiety. What if Jake didn't want to talk? What if he was too far gone, burdened under weighty expectations Mark inadvertently placed on him? Mark chewed on his lip, wrestling with the image of his son in the depths of confusion. How could he gently guide Jake back from this brink without losing him in the process? The minutes stretched as he waited. He busied himself in the workshop, surrounded by the familiar hum of machinery, and the scent of motor oil, a sanctuary where logic reigned. But today something felt off. As he tightened bolts and adjusted circuits, he couldn't shake the nagging realization that he needed to change more than just his approach. His thoughts flickered back to the risk he took starting his own engineering firm years ago. The trepidation back then was comparable to what he was feeling now. Taking risks meant confronting failures, and perhaps this was one of the greatest challenges he would face, navigating this emotional, treacherous terrain with Jake. Responsibility wasn't just about providing for his family, but also about fostering an environment for growth, creativity, and most importantly, honesty. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the room, his phone buzzed again, pulling him from his reverie. A reply from Jake glimmered on the screen. Okay, Dad. I'm scared, but I want to try. Let us talk. Relief washed over Mark, mixed with an undeniable urgency. This conversation was a matter of navigating uncharted waters. He had stumbled so far in his anticipation for Jake to succeed that he had overlooked what really mattered. Helping Jake find his own path, free from expectation, judgment, and the pressure of currency. With newfound determination, Mark set a time for their talk, promising himself to listen more than he spoke. Perhaps it was time to revitalize not just his relationship with his son, but also his sense of self-discovery. The silence that followed felt electric. Mark now faced an impending moment of reckoning. Little did he know, the most profound revelations were waiting just beyond that conversation, ready to shatter the framework of their struggles. There was a journey to embark on, one that might redefine who both he and Jake could become in the face of newfound truths. What would Jake reveal next? Would Mark be prepared to embrace the unexpected growth that awaited them both? The afternoon sun cast elongated shadows across the workshop, as Mark meticulously adjusted his tools, each movement almost mechanistic, driven by the need for focus. The hum of the machinery became a soothing backdrop as he anticipated their impending conversation. But thoughts of his unresolved concerns about Jake crept in. He could hardly concentrate on the task at hand. It was as if he were standing inside a car, about to take the wheel but unsure of which direction to steer. He replayed Jake's message in his mind, the fear and the hint of hope intertwined in those few words. Mark realized this conversation could redefine everything. It wasn't just about him unraveling the expectations he inadvertently placed onto Jake. It was about interrogating his own fears and failures, which had seeded the expectations in the first place. Mark's mind raced as he considered how he had always been a planner. From the early days of designing his company's first product to strategizing growth, every decision had been calculated, precise. But with Jake, that approach felt stark and devoid of warmth. He could lay out the grand plans, but could he embrace the chaos of an emotional dialogue? He leaned against his workbench, allowing eager questions to rise through the mental fog. What if Jake expressed resentment, or worse, disappointment? Was he prepared for that kind of honesty? He needed sincerity from Jake, but more than that, he needed to find his own voice in the exchange. Checking his watch, Mark felt every second pulling taut, a tangible thing he could grasp yet never control. What would he say? He had told Jake he was there for him, but that was not enough. The weight of his past decisions loomed over him. Perhaps the real conversation needed to begin with his own revelations, sharing his vulnerabilities instead of merely seeking answers from Jake. That moment, a commotion from outside stirred his thoughts. He peered through the workshop window, spotting some neighborhood kids playing basketball on the street. Their laughter and carefree enthusiasm contrasted starkly with the tension brewing within him. Watching them, Mark realized that childhood and the inherent belief in possibility was slipping through his fingers like sand. How had he allowed ambition and standards to overshadow the joy in Jake's life? In a sudden burst of clarity, he grabbed a notebook and began jotting down thoughts. The raw honesty of his own emotions flowed onto the pages, snippets of memories, aspirations, his own childhood dreams buried under adult expectations. Each note encapsulated moments he shared with Jake that had been eclipsed by ambition: family game nights, camping trips, their shared hobby of building model airplanes. These memories stirred something in him, a reminder of the bond they shared, one that could re-emerge in the light of honesty. The workshop grew dim as twilight settled in, and Mark took a deep breath, closing the notebook with a decisive clap. He had a plan, not a strategy rooted in control, but rather an unfolding of layers, raw and real. He was ready to embrace both the discomfort and the potential for connection. In this vulnerability, perhaps he could carve out space for Jake to express himself freely. When their designated hour finally arrived, Mark's heart drummed in his chest. He wasn't merely pacing toward a conversation. He was approaching a moment of truth that ignited hope and fear in equal measure. He considered texting Jake once more, something light, a reminder that he was waiting, eager for the truth to flow between them. Suddenly, before he could reach for his phone, it vibrated again. His hands trembled as he glanced at the screen. A new message from Jake. "Dad, I've been thinking I want to talk about something important with you too. Something I've kept to myself." In that instant, the air thickened with unspoken possibilities. Mark sensed the tipping point they were on, each word a doorway to new revelations. What depths would this new conversation reveal? Would it break down their barriers or strengthen them in unforeseen ways? Mark paced his workshop, the remaining light casting long shadows from the tools that had once brought him solace. Now they felt like reminders of the invisible barrier he had created with Jake. He had poured his heart into the workshop and his work, yet here he was, wrestling with the discomfort of uncertainty. The message from Jake had ignited something deep within him, a mix of dread and anticipation. As he steeled himself for the conversation, he couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy that settled in his stomach. What if he stumbled in expressing his true intentions? He ran his fingers across the coarse surface of the workbench, seeking grounding in the familiar textures. This was a different kind of craftsmanship, one that required vulnerability over technical skill. In the quiet of the workshop, he began to reflect on how he had always approached challenges head-on, with a strategic plan mapped out in advance. But vulnerability didn't follow a blueprint, nor could it be engineered precision. It was messy, unpredictable, and inherently human. Mark recognized his own need to adapt rather than dictate. If he wanted a real bond with Jake, he had to relinquish the need for control and embrace the openness inherent in fatherhood. Mark found himself questioning, how much had he let his fears dictate their relationship? The expectations he had placed on Jake had often suffocated their moments together. He would plan family outings hoping to impact Jake's future positively, but somewhere along the way he had forgotten to ask Jake what he wanted. It struck him, the foundations of their relationship needed to be rebuilt from mutual understanding and support, not just ambition and aspiration. Suddenly, the image of several past conversations with Jake flashed in his mind, moments when he had dismissed Jake's feelings as juvenile, moments where his striving for excellence had overshadowed the simplicity of acceptance. Taking a deep breath, he wanted to reclaim those lost opportunities. The workshop wasn't just a haven for his craft anymore. It had become a sanctuary for reconstruction. He rifled through the notebook of thoughts he had compiled earlier, flipping to a blank page. As he sketched out his intention for the conversation, he considered how best to express what he had learned. There it was, raw, unfiltered, genuine. No more stepping around the truth. He would share his own faults and feelings openly. Just then, a slight rustle at the entrance snapped him back to the present. There stood Jake, hesitantly leaning against the doorframe, vulnerability etched on his face. Mark's heart raced. Would Jake sense his own trepidations? Would he understand that Mark had grappled with his growth and intentions? "Hey Dad," Jake began, hesitating as if searching for the right words. Mark gestured him inside, leaving the door open to invite an easier passage between their contrasting worlds. "Jake, I've been thinking a lot too," Mark replied, his voice steadying as it rose above his fears. "Things haven't been right between us for a while. I'd like to share some things with you if you're up for it. As they settled into the space, anticipation hung palpably. Mark's heart raced, building an earnest connection that was well overdue. After all this time spent avoiding the discomfort, there was something exhilarating about leaning into it. But the path to understanding remained layered and complex. As Jake began to speak, Mark felt the room shift, echoing with the weight of everything left unsaid. Each word could be a thread that weaved them closer together or a rift that threatened to send them spiraling apart again. Mark's breath caught as he listened intently, fearing what truth lay ahead. The time had come to face not only Jake's revelations but also the fierce, raw honesty inside himself that he had long neglected. What would Jake unveil, and could they construct a new foundation together? The tension mounted, propelling the moment forward as Mark braced for the unexpected. What new truths would unravel between them? Would this become a fragmented story of realization, or the beginning of a renewed chapter in their lives? Mark's heart thudded in his chest, a rhythm of hope and dread. Jake settled into a chair, his gaze dropping momentarily before glancing back up, a mixture of apprehension and resolve sweeping across his face. The silence stretched between them weighty, as if it bore the entire burden of their shared history. Mark's mind raced, crafting a strategy to navigate the delicate interplay of father and son. He'd always been adept at planning, yet this felt so different. "Okay, Dad, I guess we should talk," Jake finally spoke, his voice steady but quiet, as though afraid to disturb the fragile air surrounding them. "I've been thinking about us, about everything." It was the opening Mark had hoped for, a flicker of light in the dim room. "Good. I've been doing a lot of thinking too," Mark assured him, his voice gaining strength with each word. "I need to be honest about how I've approached things." Jake shifted in his seat, vulnerability etched in the way he held himself. "You mean how you always had plans for me? Like what school I should go to and what sports I should play? I know you think you're doing what's best, but it feels like I was never asked what I wanted." Mark flinched at the truth in Jake's words. There it was, the hard realization that he had prioritized his vision over Jake's individuality. He nodded, swallowing the growing lump in his throat. "You're right. I thought I was helping, guiding you towards success. But in doing that, I didn't take the time to listen to you." A moment of silence enveloped them, the weight of honesty settling like dust. Mark's heart raced, the discomfort of his admission fueling a spark of determination. He realized he had to share his own imperfections, the parts of himself that had been battling shame. "I felt lost too," Mark confessed, leaning forward as if the closeness could bridge their gap. "I thought being a good father meant making decisions for you, setting goals. But when I look back at my own father, I see how he never really understood me. I don't want to repeat that with you." Jake met Mark's gaze, and in that moment something shifted. The tension didn't dissolve, but it transformed into a shared understanding, an unspoken agreement to navigate the rough terrain together. "Dad, it's okay. I know you love me. I wanted to be seen as me, not just as your son who needs to achieve." "I see you, Jake. I'm trying to learn how to appreciate you for who you truly are," Mark said with newfound determination. Each word was a stepping stone toward a path of humility and connection. He realized he must nurture this shift in perspective daily, embracing an act of listening as an integral element of their relationship. "What if we start fresh?" Mark suggested, a hint of excitement lacing his voice. "Let us drop the expectations, the plans. Let's figure this out together. I want to hear about your dreams, your thoughts, what you want for your life." There was a pause as Jake considered this. A slow smile began to form, not just of recognition but of relief. "I'd like that. I really would. It's just sometimes it feels like you have this image of what I should be, and it's hard to live up to that." Mark nodded, experiencing a profound sense of resolve. The conversation didn't end their struggles, but it initiated a new thread, a chance to embrace vulnerability, patience, and mutual growth. As he breathed in the atmosphere of shared intent, a realization dawned on him. There would be no quick fixes, no conclusive resolutions, just a continuous process of development. Each day could be a new opportunity to connect without expectations. Yet, there was still so much left unsaid, feelings that churned just below the surface. "What if it's not just me?" Mark ventured, a deeper question emerging. "What if I pushed you to be something you are not because I fear what it would mean if you didn't fit my reality?" The honesty hung heavily in the air as Jake's eyes widened slightly, reflecting the gravity of the moment. Mark could see the inner battle unfold within his son, a narrative of hope, uncertainty, and the quest for understanding. Where would this line of questioning lead them? What truths still lay hidden just beyond their reach, waiting to be discovered? Would unveiling these deeper fears bring them closer together, or crack open wounds still too raw to heal? The room felt charged with unspoken truths. Each moment lingered in a delicate balance, and Mark sensed the need to delve deeper. He shifted in his seat, determined to peel back the layers, to explore the complexities of their relationship. An undeniable urgency washed over him. If they were to start anew, they had to navigate the difficult terrain together. "Jake," he began, carefully choosing his words, "what do you think I fear?" "Really fear?" He held his breath, aware that this was another pivotal moment. Jake looked hesitant. "I think you fear failing me. You've spent so much time planning my future that maybe you're scared of what happens if I don't follow that plan." His voice was steady, yet the vulnerability behind his words was clear. "And if I'm honest, sometimes I'm scared too. Scared of disappointing you." Mark released the tension he hadn't realized he was holding. He felt a churning within himself, an understanding that both fear and hope had intertwined in their lives like vines. The more he listened, the more he realized how much of his own experience echoed in Jake's words. "I'm scared of getting things wrong," Mark admitted, the truth surprising him as it escaped his lips. "I thought I could shape your path for you because I didn't want you to make my mistakes. But what if those very lessons are what you need to learn? What if I've kept you from discovering who you are?" The floodgates had opened, and the conversation surged forward as if propelled by a newfound force. Jake's face reflected conflict, the battle between the weight of expectations and the desire for authenticity. "It's hard not growing up under the shadow of what you think is best. I keep asking myself what I'm supposed to want, and it's exhausting." His vulnerability was palpable, a raw honesty that sparked a flame of determination in Mark. "Then let us reshape our approach," Mark proposed, fueled by a sudden clarity. "Instead of me directing, let us figure out how to share ideas. There's strength in your voice. I need to hear it. What do you want from me?" "From us?" Jake swallowed hard, the weight of his dreams surfacing hesitantly. "I want space to explore what matters to me. I want to know I can try things without worrying about disappointing you or having to meet a specific image." This request hung between them, profound and daunting. Mark felt a faint glimmer of hope blossom within. This was not just a conversation but a foundation for something deeper. "Then let us work on that together. We can start setting shared goals. I know it won't be easy, but I'm committed to this shift. You'll have to guide me just as much as I guide you." As the words resonated, the room swelled with possibility. This was a new kind of partnership, one grounded in collaboration instead of control. Mark knew this required stepping outside his comfort zone, away from control and into a space of uncertainty. Open dialogue, empathy, and patience would be the cornerstones of their evolving relationship. Yet, beneath the surface of this budding collaboration, shadows of lingering doubt still loomed. Mark couldn't shake the nagging sensation that this transformation would provoke challenges he hadn't anticipated. The atmosphere pulsed with unresolved issues, unhealed wounds from a past tangled in expectations and ambition. "Can we commit to this?" Jake's voice broke through the moment, a blend of hope and skepticism. Mark met his son's gaze, heart racing with the profound realization that their development would require effort from both sides. "Yes, but I need honest feedback. If I step out of line or push too hard, promise me you'll tell me." Jake nodded, a tentative smile breaking through the shadows of uncertainty. As they solidified their commitment, the air shifted. It was lighter yet charged with new expectations, but in that collective moment of clarity, Mark felt a nagging question tap at the edges of his mind. What other unspoken fears lay beneath the surface? Was Jake ready to confront not just his own ambitions but the anxieties that had lingered far too long? The path ahead was illuminated with potential but darkened by the weight of past themes. As they both took a step forward, the very essence of their journey beckoned them both to explore the truths they had yet to face. Mark's heart quickened, drawn deeper into the unknown, eager and afraid of what they might uncover next. The weight of their words hung in the air as Mark watched Jake's tentative smile fade into contemplation. The decisions ahead were laden with responsibility, They needed to carve out a narrative that was theirs and theirs alone, replete with both struggle and exploration. But within Mark, an unsettling notion snaked its way through the possibilities. This freedom could crumble under the fragile foundation they had just begun to build. Days blurred as they delved into brainstorming sessions, each conversation a step forward. Mark felt the exhilaration of a newfound collaboration surge through him, eclipsing his previous role as an architect of Jake's ambitions. What lay beneath that surface, though, began presenting itself in waves of uncertainty. Could he truly embrace this collaborative model without the familiar grip of fear over losing control? One evening, Mark sat at his desk, amassing a series of notes, goals, and aspirations for their new dynamic. Yet the pages felt cumbersome, the ink blotting out some inner voices urging him to embrace spontaneity. He considered all the risks. Could he really let Jake venture into paths seemingly strewn with pitfalls? The pulse in his temples quickened just at the thought. In that moment, a message pinged on his phone, jolting him from his thoughts. It was from Jake. A simple text yet charged with uncharacteristic urgency. "Dad, can we talk? There's something I need to share." An unease unfurled in Mark's gut. He pushed the file he'd been working on aside, openness battling the instinct to impose his fears yet again. Minutes later, they settled on the worn-out sofa in their living room, the dim light framing Jake's profile, revealing a mixture of apprehension and determination. Mark could feel his heart working overtime, bracing for something profound. "Okay, shoot," Mark urged, trying to mask the anxiety in his voice. Jake took a breath, an exhale that carried some weight of the world. "I've been making my own choices, Dad. I've decided to take a gap year after graduation. I want to volunteer abroad, explore and figure things out." The confession hung like a stone in the middle of the room, heavy and unexpected. Mark's mind raced, calculating the ramifications, contemplating all the possible outcomes. Volunteering? In a different country? Mark managed, his voice laced with disbelief. "What about school? What about the life we talked about?" Jake squared his shoulders, a flash of defiance in his eyes. "That's just it. You and I have been discussing this idea of me finding my own voice. I don't have to stick to the plans made for me. I want to experience the world without being shackled to expectations. I want to help people learn and grow. Isn't that what you wanted for me?" The challenge embedded in those last words struck a nerve. No longer could Mark cast his son into a mold crafted from fear. Jake's desire for autonomy was not a rebellion. It was an invitation. An invitation Mark fought to accept, grappling with the notion that he might not be ready for this leap. "We can't just go throwing ourselves into the unknown," he spoke, his voice steadier than he felt. "I had plans for you, Jake. Plans that would ensure security. I need this. To trust my instincts and yes, even make mistakes. Isn't that a part of life?" Jake countered, leaning closer, conviction radiating from him. And that moment of confrontation, a mirror reflected back at Mark, revealing his own suppressed fears of losing Jake, of losing connection. The very thing he wanted to protect was the barrier keeping them apart. Mark cleared his throat, grappling with the profound shift that lay on their horizon. "Okay, Jake. Let us talk about how to make this happen. We can set goals. But I need to know you'll be safe." A palpable tension shifted, a tenuous understanding anchored them closer as father and son. Yet Mark recognized the stakes had never felt so high. Yet, the path they were forging was fraught with personal revelations, both illuminating their strengths and exposing hidden weaknesses. As they discussed travel plans and contingencies, Mark felt a storm stirring within. He was at the precipice of an unexpected journey of love. Yet, would their newfound dynamics withstand the challenges that came next? He couldn't shake a lingering question from the dark corners of his mind. What would it take for him to fully embrace Jake's autonomy while continuing to let go of his own fears? Mark spent the following weeks oscillating between support and anxiety. The discussions with Jake gradually shifted from logistics and safety precautions to deeper reflections on what the year would mean for both of them. Every conversation around potential volunteer projects rekindled a nagging fear. The harder he held on, the more he risked suffocating the very spark of independence Jake craved. He often caught himself stealing glances at Jake, whose growing enthusiasm and determination illuminated the space around them. As Jake picked up books on cultural anthropology and global humanitarian efforts, Mark felt a bittersweet twist in his stomach, pride embroiled with lingering dread. Every night he lay awake, contemplating how he could prepare himself for the void Jake's absence might create. He found himself drafting lists, things Jake should remember, reminders for safe practices, and even words of encouragement. It was paradoxical. While he had freed Jake from the constraints he imposed, he was busy crafting a manual for the very future he feared losing. One night, Mark found focus in a different way. He seized a bright yellow sticky note and penned down one goal he desperately wanted to achieve. He had to confront his fear of losing control without abandoning the support Jake needed. He began to wonder what it meant to parent a young man ready to carve out his destiny. The realization struck him like a thunderclap. Was he more afraid of losing Jake to the world, or losing the safe little bubble they'd created? Driven by this newfound insight, Mark jumped into action with firm determination. There was no guidebook for parenting through suffocating fear and uncharted waters, but he could equate his hesitation to the overwhelm of a blank canvas. He started to commit time to understanding this shift in their relationship, attending workshops on active listening and empathy, searching online forums for stories of others who faced similar crossroads. Each new piece of information was like adding a brushstroke to a developing portrait, messy but vibrant. He also began paying closer attention to the small moments. One afternoon, while putting aside his scripts of instructions, he actively chose to engage in what Jake was experiencing. They took leisurely walks where they discussed not only plans for Jake's upcoming gap year, but also shared their musings on life and purpose. During these conversations, Mark felt cracks in his own defenses, letting Jake's stories create inroads to their shared vulnerabilities. Yet, the gnawing apprehension never fully dissipated. One evening, after a particularly earnest exchange, Mark returned to his desk, the glow of the lamp casting shadows across his tangled notes. How could he express both his unwavering support and the necessity of caution? As if by instinct, he grabbed his phone and typed out a draft message to Jake. "I want you to spread your wings, but keep one eye on the safety net." Before he could hit send, he hesitated. Was this message an encouragement or a warning? It felt like a perversion of the autonomy he wanted to bestow. He deleted the text, wrestled with himself, and captured a different thought instead. "I'm here for you. We'll face whatever comes together." It was a small shift, but for Mark, it represented a monumental understanding of what their relationship could emerge as. The line separating parenthood and friendship could blur without losing the essence of their bond. Still, as the gap year drew closer, Mark's internal environment continued to churn. What kind of father would he be as Jake stepped boldly into adulthood? He wished he had more clarity. Yet, even in the midst of uncertainty and evolving roles, an urgent truth emerged. Jake's journey couldn't be carefully laid out on a map. It had to be discovered through trial, error, and ultimately trust. With summer fast approaching, they stood on the precipice of a change neither had fully prepared for. Just as Mark began to fathom the power of this unexpected transformation, a thought unsettled him. Would distance reveal how much he truly trusted not just Jake's choices, but also his own ability to adapt in the face of uncertainty? The invitation to grow and embrace change was no longer just Jake's. It lay before Mark as well. Just as he finished crafting his last self-reminder of the night, another message pinged from Jake's phone. It was another question loaded with weight and intimacy, one that would test everything Mark had learned. "Dad, can we talk about my plans one last time? I think I might need to adjust them." Mark stared at the message, the words pulsing behind his eyes, a harsh spotlight illuminating the shadows of his uncertainty. He drew a deep breath, the air feeling heavy with concern and possibility. Adjusting plans might mean hesitation, or it could signify deeper fears Jake hadn't yet voiced. With each tick of the clock, anxiety rippled through him, echoing the worry he felt about the impending separation. "I need to approach this carefully," he told himself, navigating the unfamiliar waters with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. He set his phone down, his fingers itching with the instinct to reply quickly. But he knew better. This was a moment to listen, not to react. He focused on his breathing for a few moments, centering himself. He would not allow his own insecurities to slip into their conversation. Mark recalled their walks, how they talked about everything but this. The deeper implications of Jake's upcoming journey were finally surfacing. "Let me hear your thoughts," he resolved, crafting a reply that both encouraged openness and assured Jake that he was ready to adapt. "Sure, bud. I'm here whenever you want to talk." While waiting for Jake's response, Mark's mind wandered to his own plans and aspirations, which had also been nudged aside since Jake's decision to embark on his adventure. Hadn't he also needed to question his own assumptions about the direction of his life? As he reflected, the ties he'd held onto began to fray, giving way to glimpses of possibilities he had previously taken for granted. He could wear many hats: father, friend, mentor. But he was also Mark, a man who had dreams layered beneath the daily grind of parenting. The sensation slowly unfurled within him, an awakening to explore his own identity alongside Jake's journey. Now was an opportunity for him to redefine his path, to support while letting go. To ping finally broke the silence, and Mark's heart raced. Jake's reply read simply, "Okay. How about tomorrow afternoon?" Mark smiled, eager for the conversation and all it might unveil. As he prepared for their discussion, he glanced around his home, his sanctuary. Everything in sight evoked memories: a child's laughter, wins and losses, hard lessons learned within these walls. So much had taken place here, but the thought of what lay ahead was daunting. Change was programming a new script, an encyclopedia of emotion both unexpected and welcome. Mark began to review the past months. The workshops, the moments of vulnerability he had shared with Jake, and the new dynamics emerging in their relationship. Implicit faith was about to become explicit. He was grappling with his expectations and had to be honest with himself about his capability to adapt and understand his son's evolving needs. Parenting was never stagnant, it was fluid, a constant recalibration of priorities and boundaries. After a restless night of imagining various scenarios for their talk, Mark found himself both terrified and empowered as the sun rose. He considered the possibility that Jake's adjustments weren't merely about his plans, but also an avenue for dialogue that could challenge yet deepen their bond. Instead of immutable parental advice, he could become a co-navigator, sharing responsibility in this personal growth. As they sat together that afternoon, staring across the table, Jake's eyes brimmed with a mixture of excitement and fear. Mark swallowed hard, resolved to embrace the uncertainty. The stakes felt precarious, but he knew that they would need to traverse this rocky territory together. "Ready?" Jake asked, his voice steady, but a question lingered in the air: the question of trust, shared dreams, and whether this next step might threaten or enhance their connection. Mark returned Jake's gaze, breath catching in his throat. It was now or never to step back and assess his role not just as a father but as a fellow traveler on this journey of self-discovery. "Let us dig in," he said. But what neither of them yet realized was that the real exploration would begin in this moment, not with destinations, but with the depths of their own understanding. And with that impending dialogue, a new tension surged, one that would challenge Mark's readiness to not only support Jake but face his own latent fears head-on. Was he prepared to relinquish control in tandem with his son? As Mark and Jake faced each other, the air thick with shared anticipation, Mark felt the enormity of the moment cresting like a wave. He was no longer just guiding his son, but entering into a partnership, one defined by open dialogue and mutual respect. "Tomorrow I want to change my plans for the gap year," Jake began, his voice steady yet tinged with vulnerability. "I think I want to take a trip across the country before going abroad. It'll give me a chance to really understand what's out there, and who I am before diving into a different culture." Mark detected a thrill underlying the youthful exuberance in Jake's voice. This wasn't simply a shift in logistics, it was Jake's way of asserting his autonomy, showcasing ambition untethered from expectations. The remnants of fear flickered in Mark's mind but were quickly replaced by a rush of pride. "That sounds incredible, Jake. This is your adventure, and I want you to shape it in a way that feels right for you." The moment breathed life into Mark's own journey of self-discovery. As they exchanged ideas, dreams unfolded at the table like a spectrum of colors, vivid and rich. For the first time, Mark wasn't directing but listening intently. Together they painted a shared vision, allowing Mark to glimpse the dreamer he once was before obligations dulled his spark. "Yes, I want to travel to the national parks." Jake sounded enthused now. His eyes brightened with excitement. So much to explore, even hiking. Camping. The vision of adventure rolled off his tongue, infecting Mark with a sense of direction he hadn't felt in years. As they navigated the specifics of Jake's plans, discussing itineraries, potential volunteering opportunities, and personal risks. Mark felt his heart swell with acceptance. He realized his fears were merely echoes of the past, resonating through expectations he had projected onto Jake. This new space allowed them to confront their truths, shedding layers they had previously worn as armor. Dad, I know it might seem daunting for you, but you have to trust me. This gap year isn't me running away. It's about finding my footing, my identity. Jake's tone shifted slightly to an earnest plea, punctuated by courage. I know. Mark's voice trembled slightly, coursing with the resolve to support. And I'm proud of you for taking this leap. I've learned that letting go of control doesn't mean losing you. It means allowing you to fly. With each passing minute, the partnership that reverberated between them solidified into something deeply profound. Mark recognized that the blending of their lives was now marked by mutual respect and evolution that had forever changed the fabric of their relationship. As the discussions deepened, Jake expressed insecurities regarding pursuing his ambitions. What if I make mistakes, Dad? What if I let you down? It was the echo of the old narrative still clinging on, but now Mark stood ready to dismantle them. Jake, mistakes are how we grow. I've made my share. And it's not about being perfect but rather learning and reshaping our futures. I want you to embrace every part of this journey. Mark paused for a moment, feeling the sincerity of his own words. You don't have to carry my expectations. Just bring me along on your journey, and let me support you in the way you need. Jake's gaze softened, understanding cementing their shared truth as they embraced authenticity. Mark felt a resonance within himself, clear an affirmation that achieving personal growth had familial benefits. The pressure had lifted. It was replaced by something more freeing, a belief in Jake's capability to navigate the unknown. Their conversation meandered into laughter as they made tentative plans, timelines, and destinations shared seamlessly. The room radiated a vivid energy. Both father and son basked in the realization that they were now collaborators, no longer bound by the weight of past failures but illuminated by opportunities to embrace vulnerability. As sunset cast warm golden hues, Jake responded thoughtfully, I never knew how much I needed this perspective. Thank you for letting me explore my passions. I mean it. Mark, enveloped in a sea of pride, recognized just how far they had journeyed. He felt a newfound sense of integrity and purpose. They were no longer striding over thresholds of expectation. They were nurturing a future filled with endless possibilities. Now let us work on making that road trip a reality, Mark said, grinning. Yes, let us plan this. Jake beamed back, excitement radiating that evening. As their conversation began to wind down, Mark sensed a closing of an old chapter for both of them. He wasn't just an engineer anymore. He was a father who had learned the power of support over control, partnership over expectation. His heart thumped, not from fear, but from the deep connections now woven into the fabric of their lives. Both felt a satisfaction that resonated in their bones. The conversation had allowed them to redefine both their identities, shifting from ambition to understanding, from anxiety to hope. Mark understood that true achievement did not come from accolades or degrees. It came from the shared journey of growth, acceptance, and unconditional love. As Mark reclined back into the warmth of the moment, he recognized that, together, they deconquered the vastness of their emotional landscapes. The road ahead was yet untraveled and thrillingly unknown to navigate together toward their own destinies, and perhaps, in turn, they would both find fulfillment. Mark turned with a smile, buoyed on new possibilities and untethered aspirations. A profound sense of contentment washed over him as he considered the journey that still lay ahead. This was the moment. Transformed and resolute, ready for whatever roads life might now unfold. Now that you've witnessed this incredible conclusion filled with transformation and growth, here's your chance to fuel your journey for more emotional stories. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can change your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these powerful narratives coming. Seriously, it makes a difference for everyone seeking positivity. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear your insights. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Your support is essential. And only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions.